So back to the death of Chop Suey and the business of dragging a VC on the road behind an armored troop carrier. The idea was to paralyze the locals, who saw this with pure terror. But one time it came out different. The Vietnamese girl was dragged and died in front of her people, and Chop Suey was up on top of the troop carrier, watching her body slowly give up its life on the rocky road below. But this time it was different. Two Vietnamese, Son Tran and Vo Huang, recognized him. And Chops was Asian. How could he do this? They remembered him in the PX where they worked, earning money to help feed their village and fight the Americans. They stole cigarettes and sandals from the PX when they could. They bided their time. They volunteered for extra duty on barracks detail to learn which bed was his. Third from the north on the east side. They left a window unlocked. Nearest his bed on the night of June 3rd, 1970, a hot night. They loosened the screen that afternoon. They waited. At about 2 a.m., Vo Huang helped Son Tran through the window, who quickly, very quickly, slit Chop's throat, deep, severing the esophagus so his blood and life gurgled away, slowly up and away in his throat in a ghastly sound of big red bubbles. Vo Huang and Son Tran were terribly frightened that night. Their hearts were pounding. Their hands were shaking when they did it. Son Tran stepped on one of Chop's slippers as he cut his throat and stabbed him 4 times with the knife, making a ghastly sliding sound as it scraped off his ribs and into his heart and lungs. The slipper felt like a rat under his bare foot in the dark. Son Tran felt total terror and almost fell as he dropped from the window and ran away into the night. He shook convulsively and his teeth chattered till dawn. He was only 15 years old. Is this any way to be 15 years old? So that took care of 4. Think of the effort to kill 100 more, let alone 1,000 more, and how inconceivable to kill 8,171 in less than a decade, to say nothing of 50,000 more? Yes, 58,171 total others, without helmets or uniforms, or bulletproof vests, or soft drinks, or medicine, or factory-made tanks and armored group carriers on your side. 58,175 to kill. Imagine trying to kill, really kill, that many in Nebraska, El Salvador, South Africa, Boston, New Orleans, or New York City. 7,000 of them at least in the Rocky Mountains. Can you imagine what kind of a project it would be to make a commitment to kill 7,000 people in New York City? Where would you start? In the Bronx? In Queens? In Brooklyn? That is a commitment, one that shapes the rest of your lives, if you live. Try real hard to deal with all this before your denial system steps in, to save you from disbelief you can't handle. The simple truth is, we Americans did these things, all of them. Nice guys that lived down the block and that we had known in high school, and that some of us had gone to the senior prom with, wearing the corsage they gave us. Try to live with this, and maybe to begin to understand the world better and our part in it. Or just go right onto your desk, living with the awesome lies our American world view is built based on. Don't think about it. Don't think about this poem. Don't read it a second time. Just throw it away or stamp and spit on it fast before it touches your guts, and you start to wonder about a lot of things before you begin to live the uneasy feeling. You don't know what what's true anymore, and maybe never did. So, finally, try to imagine there's a second Vietnam Memorial Wall that faces the other from across the path and is 20 times as long and has over 1 million names on it. They're hard to pronounce because they're Vietnamese. They've been broken down by panels. There's 1,460 panels compared to our 70. Panels 1 to 808 are males. 809 to 1460 are all females dead. 809 to 1015 are little girls below the age of 10. 137,000 of them. On our wall there are none. There may be a dozen women on ours. I don't know. The oldest in Vietnam was 116, and she was killed because we figured there must be some communists in her village. By the way, tell me again what a communist is. By now, after all these years, you should be real clear on this. I'll tell you who didn't know what it was all about. The 58,000 Americans who died there. Those promising, frightened, mostly decent and brave guys that died there. That's who. Really didn't know what it was all about. Same as all the others who survived and came home, many to be mental patients and basket cases, and street persons who couldn't find a job, scorned strangely by their communities, buried by their own uncomfortable silent guilt, and so on and so on. Practically none of us knew what the war was about. 74% had no idea what the war was about, not really. 18% of the 58,000 couldn't even spell Vietnam right up to the moment of their death. 92% knew it had something to do with communism. 97% couldn't define communism. 99% never heard of dialectical materialism. 12% thought Carlo was one of the Marx Brothers because they heard that somewhere. They couldn't remember where. So please tell me now. If you can't tell us now, please God, when can you tell us? What was it all about? My fellow countrymen and countrywomen, do you think you will ever know? Or do you have the uneasy feeling you will never really know? You just will never know, ever. October 3rd, 1990.